You're listening to the Mind Your Business podcast, episode number 74. Today, we're talking all about nothing. So, stay tuned. Hi, I'm James Wedmore, and I've built a 7-figure internet business that offers the financial freedom to do what I want, when I want. And I'm the first to say that hard work and hustle are not essential ingredients for your success. So, how do you build a thriving business from the inside out? This is the Mind Your Business podcast, featuring myself and co-host Phoebe Mroczek. All right, hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the call. James Wedmore here.
And I'm Phoebe Mroczek.
And this is the Mind Your Business podcast.
And today we're talking about nothing.
Nothing. Okay, this is a really fun experiment that we wanted to try. And most people, are, when they hear the experiment, they're going to say, nope, skip this one. So, bear with us a little bit. But it's our 74th episode. We just, if you listen to the last episode, we just passed 1 year since we officially launched the podcast. So, yay, us. Very exciting. Phoebe's actually here in the, air quotes, studio, Wedmore HQ, down in Laguna Beach, California. So she is here in the flesh. I can see her, and she's not just like a ghost on Skype, where we have to have those like awkward, like, oh, you go, my turn. Now we can give like facial cues and nonverbal communication. But it's a big deal. For us, we just hit a year with the episode, and we have a list of so many topics that we want to talk about, don't we?
We do. We came up with all the guests we want to have on the show.
A lot of guests for this year. I think that'll be a big shift for this year, is a lot of guests. And then we said, great, so what do we want to do for this first one? Nothing.
Yeah, it sounds, I've been traveling all day, all the way from San Francisco down to Orange County, so that took forever.
Yeah.
About 2 hours. And now let's just get on. Now that we can see each other, it's so weird.
Realistically, what I want to do is say, what if we approached an episode where we are it was like the opposite of having a very strict, rigid schedule of, here's the bullet points of the checklist of the 7 steps of all the things that you got to learn and blah, blah, blah. And just had a very candid, casual conversation and let it just unfold naturally and have a good conversation with you. So we literally still, at this point, I'm looking to Phoebe like, you got to come up with something sometime, but we have no idea what we're going to talk about. But I think it's a great place to start for us to just take a moment and kind of reflect on the last year of this passion project and this exciting little adventure that, we've just received so much feedback so far. And so I think the first thing we want to do is thank and acknowledge every one of our listeners.
So I want to say thank you, from my side, because I've gotten so many emails, and we get, we have a customer support girl, Dina and Rose, 2 of them, and they send us really nice, any of the emails that we get from people, from listeners, they are always sure to send them our way. And then I get personal ones to my email, and it's just so nice. I've said it several times before, but I always forget that when we sit here in front of the microphone that we actually talk to people and they listen, and everyone's like, oh, I feel like I know you. I feel like we'd be friends. And that's just such an exciting place to be, because I remember when we first came down here and started recording them, and I just sat in front of the microphone, and I swear my face was just blank. I was so nervous. And you were like, just talk normal. But I couldn't. We'd have a great conversation, and I'd sit in front of the microphone and just completely freeze.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think a lot of this started from when Phoebe started working closer with me and running her business. I was sharing a lot of not just the strategy stuff, but the stuff that eventually became a lot of the episodes. And when I was working with a few coaching clients behind the scenes, this is what we always came back to, is the unspoken, unseen elements of what it's like to be an entrepreneur and what it takes. And those have really started to develop into some episodes, and we have so many more that I'm really excited about. So I think this first year was a test. It was let's put it out here. We barely marketed it. We barely promoted it. And it was just unbelievable. So now we're sitting here like, all right, it's game time. And to make it really official, we got these little things. What are these called again?
I think they're mic flags.
A mic flag.
So they're like a little box with our logo on it that sits on top of our microphone. And I saw Rick Mulready had one the other day in his Instagram. And I was like, oh, I'm going down to Laguna Beach. I'm going to surprise him with these. And they came last night at like 8:30. Yeah. Just in the nick of time. But they're really cool and I feel really official.
Yeah, it's official now. So we're going to get into some stuff today. We're going to, let some conversations organically unfold. I think one thing I want to talk about first is, I know we're going to do a future episode on this. I'm actually really excited about this. For those of you who are interested in starting or launching your podcast, we're going to have an episode coming up on some great strategies, tips, and tactics for launching your podcast. But let's start there. Let's start with having a conversation with the person that's letting fear get in the way of starting or launching your podcast, your product, your business, your website, or anything. And I mean, let's start there. Like, what's going on there, right?
Well, this is something I can everyone can identify with, but something especially for me is taking a turn in my business recently. And I've decided to go in a new direction and really stepping outside of that fear. And that was something for me that it was really scary. I was like, I don't know. Is this the right move? Is this not the right move? So I just had to really trust in myself and be like, you know what? This is part of my entrepreneurial journey, as much as everyone says that. And you're like, oh, I hate when they say that. But it really is. And I was really okay with, well, you know what? If it fails, then it's not a reflection of me or who I am. It is just, well, it didn't work, and let's figure out how to fix it.
Well, that's a huge thing right there, because if it is a reflection of you, if it does say something about who you are as a human being, then it would totally make sense that you would have a fear of putting yourself out there, that you would not want to put yourself out there. And that's the thing we need to check in with is, what does it say about you, or what do you think it'll say about you if this doesn't work, if it flops, if people criticize it? And, the secret at the end of the day is nothing. Nothing unless you let it mean something. And so a story I want to reflect on, a moment so powerful, I was telling Phoebe about this before the show, was at a live event we did a couple years ago for one of our programs that I partner with my good buddy Brandon Lucero. And we teach a live event called Local Video Academy, LVA Live. And at this live event, a big component of what we teach is how to get clients and how to pitch your services and close clients for high-priced items. People are charging $2,000 to $5,000 for making a video. And the biggest thing stopping people is, we could simplify it as much as possible and say, here are the 3 steps, here are the 5 steps, and people are still getting stuck. And so we went around and we did this exercise where we had people write down, what do you make it mean when someone says no to you, or when you don't make the sale? Or what are you afraid it's going to mean about you or say about you? It was the most moving, revealing, telling experience ever. We had people crying, like people just revealing that I'm not good enough. It means that I'm not good enough for them, for me, for everybody, that I'm not smart enough, that I don't know what I'm doing, that I'm a failure, that this won't work. And everyone just went around sharing. Now, in my back pocket, figuratively, I knew that there was a woman in the room that's a superstar salesperson. She could sell ice to an Eskimo any day of the week. And I called on her last. And she was in the front row, of course, superstar, like teacher's pet. And I said, what do you make it mean when you don't get the sale, when someone says no? Without skipping a beat, she just looked me dead in the eye and she said, nothing. I mean, that's precisely it. Now, easier said than done, and our listeners listening in can understand that conceptually, that we've all had failures and flops. I've shared them on webinars before in the past, and people love when I share all the mistakes I made. And the thing is I'm still here, right? Yep. No one's going to reach their hand through the computer and punch you in the face or anything. But we make these fears that hold us back because we do think it's going to say something about who we are, or that it will doom us forever. I think that's the other thing, right? That it becomes this permanent thing. Mm-hmm. Now my name is tainted and destroyed in the industry, and I'm finished. I'm ruined. That's just so not the case.
And it's funny because I remember when you and I were talking right before my Sonoma event, and I was in a bit of a breakdown. I was like, I don't know if maybe I should push it back and all this. And you're like, what are you making this mean? And it just, the more I verbalized it, I realized how ridiculous it was. And I was like, well, it means that I suck at everything and that I'm not even good at it. And I was like, no. As I was saying it, I could catch myself and be like, no, that's actually not at all what that means.
Right.
That's silly. All right, let me do this. Obviously we have talked about it on a previous episode, but let's make this not about me. Let's make this about them. And that's like when everything changed for me.
That's a big piece, and we'll get to that. Mm-hmm. But remember what else we talked about, where when you acknowledged it, there was fear there. I just started probing, like we take a flashlight into the dark. So the analogy I would use for this next process we're going to give you is if, let's say you're afraid of the dark and you're afraid of a monster in your closet. This is like the analogy. It's like, well, if you open the closet and shine a flashlight into the closet, I mean, the fear is going to go away, right? Because you can see everything in the closet. And so that's kind of what we did. If you remember, I asked you, okay, well, what's the worst thing that could happen? And we played out the scenario. And you remember it was like, well, no one attends. Okay, so what's the worst thing that's going to happen if no one attends? And then you kind of like, oh, well, I don't have to do it. And then it's like, okay, what's the next worst thing that's going to happen? You go, well, actually, what would be even worse is only one person attends. And we actually played through that scenario, and we even came up with contingency plans. And so I think that's just a really, I don't know if that helped, but I just think that's always a great thing to do is say, okay, what's the worst case scenario? What's the worst that can happen? What am I afraid of happening? And then literally play it out like you're shining a flashlight on this possible worst case scenario. And a lot of times you can, once you declare it and share it and kind of reveal what's in that closet, metaphorically speaking, you start to go, oh, well, that's not that bad. Mm-hmm. Like, okay, so if no one does this, like, so what? It's not like I have to broadcast the world. Hey, everyone, no one bought my thing, and I just want to make sure everyone knows that it didn't work and I failed miserably. Like, your biggest failures, 99% of the people will have no idea that it failed. No idea.
Well, it goes back to everyone's so consumed with their own lives that no one is watching you or paying attention to you and what you're doing.
Yes.
And we always think that. We're like, oh, God, everyone's watching me. And that was a big thing for me. I was like, oh, my gosh, if this doesn't work, and what if nobody comes and all this, what is that saying about me? And everyone's going to think I'm a loser.
You want to talk about fear? Wait until you've, built a huge business and have a huge audience and have a ton of people on you, watching you every day, listening to your weekly podcast, and then make a mistake. That's where it's like, oh my gosh, like there's something at stake there. You know what I mean? Like we've done launches and promotions, and the way that it's a little incestuous. There's gossip. Like information just flies so fast. People are always like, how did that do? How did this go? Blah, 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 blah. And people, like, I don't ask because I try and stay out of so much of this drama, but it always comes back, oh, did you hear of this about blah, blah, blah? And and those are people that are like established people in the industry. I mean, you should be like developing the fear versus starting with it. You know what I mean? But when there's nothing to lose or we're just starting out and that's the thing that's holding us back, it's like, man, now's the time to just jump in. And, here's another thing, just speaking to this whole fear thing is we were crafting a new offer and I knew like what the offer was, but I couldn't nail down the specifics and I was having a hard time with it. And I was like, maybe it's not the right time, right? Maybe I should not force this and just let it go for now. And then I read on some book or somewhere talking about and it just reminded me of the whole Silicon Valley fail fast, fail often, and fail forward mentality. That gave me just a little push I needed to be like, yeah, that's what I want to do with this. I won't get the insight and the feedback that I need until I just throw it out there and see what happens. And instead of me approaching it from like, what if no one takes it? What if everyone rejects it? Or what if I get booed off? You know what I mean? I approach it from like, I got to start somewhere. And this is about us putting the scientist hat on, right? Can you be the scientist in your business where you make a hypothesis? Like, okay, I hypothesize that this offer to this audience will make money. Let's find out. Nope, it didn't work. Okay, what would work? I mean, man, if we could remove ourselves, that's easier said than done. Conceptually, you guys are like, oh, I get that. But to actually do that and to run your business that way, I mean, it's so powerful.
So I had a girl this girl I just met a couple weeks ago, and we're sitting in a bar and we're talking about her latest. She was selling these photos of hers. And so we're going over, like, you know, of course I put the beer down, put on my business hat, I guess. I was looking at her, I was like, right. And so, you know, how far along are you? And like, what's going on? Tell me everything. And she's like, yeah. And, you know, I put it out to my Facebook friends and online. I like started kind of a Shopify site, but it took me a month to figure it out. And I was like, all right, what happened? She goes, oh my God, the best thing ever happened. I'm like, what? And she goes, I sold 3. And in my head, I was like, wait, is that a joke? Is she like, I couldn't really tell. And she goes, I mean, it's better than 0, and it's my first one. Why would I ever think that I would ever sell more than 3? I was amazed. And she's like, and one of them was my mom. I can't even believe it. And it was so refreshing to be sitting there with her, watching her be so excited about something, because I know in that same situation, that would have crushed me, you know, in so many situations. And I was just so in awe of her enthusiasm and her attitude towards, well, why would I be good at this? I've never done it before. I don't have a degree in, you know, in business or anything in art. I just did it because I loved it. And this is what happened. And maybe next time I'll get 5. And it was just really, really exciting.
There's so many traps that we put ourselves in that's really funny that I see time and time again. And I get it. You know, one of them is these goal setting things where the goal setting thing itself, you know, we've done episodes on this. It gets all funky, right? Like people tell you to set big goals, dream big. So you do. And then the moment you hit any shy of that goal, you're a friggin' failure. And it's like, well, wait a second. You set that goal. Like no one else came to you and said, this is what you should do. Mm-hmm. You created that. And then all of a sudden you didn't hit this goal that you created and you beat yourself up and it isn't a win. So then other people go, oh, well, I'll keep my goals super low so that I don't disappoint myself. And now are you limiting yourself? Who knows? And so a big piece about what we talk about is that a goal has nothing to do with identifying who you are or anything like that. And anything like that. It's just, it identifies what type of game you want to play. You want to play a big game? You want to play like first win? Whatever. I think that's the first piece. The second piece is this whole detachment conversation where, you know, when you ask someone, okay, well, what does it mean? What do you make it mean if you don't hit your goal? And people go back into that, I'm a failure. I can't do anything right. People don't like me. That's just not the case. Like, it takes time. It takes time. And if we can let go of the goal and not have it mean anything about who we are, not have it make any meaning at all, just be completely detached from it, we can start to have a little bit more fun. Mm-hmm. And, you know, it's just such a great example because 3 sales, first time out of the gate, that's a huge win. And that's a huge thing to be, you know, celebratory about. And, you know, even 9 years later, 1 sale, I should still and always be just as grateful. Everyone should. I think, like, I did this little workshop back in December, and Patty Palmer was there with Deep Space Sparkle. And we got talking, and like it's really fascinating over the years, and this is ultimately what this podcast tries to bottle, is this conversation I had with her about, you know, I get curious and fascinated about how people see business, how they approach business, how they live and act and react in the world of business. And I just love Patty's approach. So as a retired art teacher, she has a passion for teaching, and she has a real, genuine desire to help people. Those things fuel her, right? And then the business itself and the revenue and the growth is kind of these like natural...
Like byproduct.
Byproduct, thank you. That is the word. Natural byproduct of her way of being and showing up in her business. Like if every day I go in there and I offer them what they need and I help them, and what do you know? More people come and it's really fun and this is great. And I never thought it would have ever gotten to where it is. And like there's just this gratitude and fascination and detachment and just like that's the thing, is like no one can stop you. No one can take from you your commitment and level of service to other people. Mm-hmm. Nothing, no technology, no one in politics, like the government, right? Or a new president's not going to take away your ability to help other people. no new technology or platform or whatever that we tend to blame all these external factors on, like, oh, this has changed, or now this platform's dead, or now I've got to learn this new. None of that is going to take away that commitment and desire to be of service to others. And I think if we lead with that, there are some really cool natural byproducts that come from that.
Well, I love Patty's approach. I have since last year when we first met. She is always, it's just so funny because she's always just so surprised when all this happens.
Yeah.
And she's like, oh my gosh, I just enrolled 900 new members. Is that good? And we're like, wow, that is amazing, Yeah. And it's so nice because I love to see people that, you can always say it's not about the money, but we wouldn't be in business if that wasn't a big motivator. But for Patty, it's like she just continues to show up all the time to make a difference. And, when we're telling her about like little new tools or platforms or services that she needs, she's like, well, just tell me which one to get and I'll do it. Because she doesn't want to mess around with all these other things and test them all out and see which one's going to be the best. She's like, tell me what the best is. I'm going to use it so that I can go and serve the people I want to serve.
Yeah.
It's really inspiring. And that is why she's definitely one to watch in the art space and just online business space in general, because she's skyrocketed.
I know. And, I had that conversation with her. I was just like, how do I bottle this? You can't. Like, even on this podcast, I'm sitting here listening to ourselves talk, and I'm like, we're not doing that justice, because it's like, how do you explain? You can't write a book on confidence. Mm-hmm. You can't write a book on leadership, and someone reads it and they're like, I am leading, I am confident. Like, you can't. You can't read a book on how to ride a bike and know how to ride a bike at the end of the book. You only learn how to ride a bike by getting on the darn bike and falling and falling and falling. And so, yeah, it's an indescribable just essence of, some people have it. And man, that's just so important. And doing this for 9 years, like, now I just keep looking back, and it's hard. Like, we were talking about this before the show, is that the big challenge I have now is the way I operate and the way my team operates is so different, in good ways, but also in bad ways, from someone who's just starting out. I've forgotten in so many ways what it's like to say, okay, I'm going to do this thing, and I have no idea what it is, and I have no idea how to get started, and I'm reading blogs, and there's videos here, and this guy's got a podcast, and they're doing, and I have no idea, and I'm so overwhelmed, and it's just me, and I only have a few hours a day. Like, that was so long ago for me that it's really hard. And the person you need to show up as then and now, I don't even know if it's the same person. But if I could talk to anybody who's just starting, and, or maybe me 9 years ago, the question really becomes around, how do you speed up that process, right? How do you get from that day one to the growth that's going to make you say, oh my gosh, this is working? There's so much. And that's, I think, what this first year of the podcast has been, is saying like, hey, if you're looking for the latest tool or the secret strategy, which I think a lot of people are just so hungry for, what's the thing that's going to work? And I mean, so many people where it's like not working for them, they go, I've heard this before. Mm-hmm. Okay, that should be a good thing. Like, I've heard you should do webinars before. Tell me something new. No. Why don't you just do what works? And if 10 people are telling you should do a webinar, maybe you should just do the webinar.
Yeah.
But, I think from a internal perspective, the mindset, there has to be this sense of unwavering knowing. Mm-hmm. Just the knowingness. I mean, I was telling, I believe it was my wife Chelsea just the other day, that if you've heard people say things like, what you did as a kid for fun is like what you should do and get paid for as an adult. Have you ever heard anyone say that?
Yeah, I have, yeah.
So when I was a kid, like, I'm talking like 5 years old, I used to set up, if I can explain this properly, a play little table or desk in front of my room, and I would pretend to be a business. And this was like the cashier. I was like the cashier at the business. And when my parents, there's only my parents and my sister, and my sister was crawling at the time, so it was really just my parents. Whenever they walked by, I'd be like, oh, hello, sir. Welcome. May I help you? Like, I was trying to start a business at 5 years old. Like, that was something for me I really loved. And so there's always been a knowing, especially once I learned that obviously the internet wasn't around back when I was a little child, but once I realized the possibilities of the internet, I was like, oh my gosh, like I know this is what I'm meant to be doing. And when you find that knowing, talking about your purpose, right? Then you got to lead with that. You got to hold on to that, and you got to let that guide you. If you're going into this with everything is, why isn't this working? I suck. I can't do this. Like, that's the number one thing that's keeping you from what you want, is the self-doubt, is the lack of confidence, the fear, that all of that. And then people, of course, ask, well, how do you overcome that? Which brings us right back around. And I think ultimately, if you can focus on being of service to your audience, to someone who is desperately asking for help, you can at least for a moment get out of your own way and actually help.
So there's something in there that I wanted to kind of address, but I too had a stationery stand and a rock stand when I was little, and I went in to have a scrunchie making business in 5th grade. And all of these things, I've always had a million hobbies. And I don't know if this is the Gemini in me, which a lot of my new friends are into that. And so they've been telling me a lot of my personality based on the fact that I'm a Gemini. But I've always had so many passions and so many different projects that I want to do. I'm always, I start a lot of projects and then I don't always finish them. So when I heard you say, just follow that passion, I'm like, oh,
which one?
Like that, like hurts my heart. Cause I'm like, I know that there's so many, I hope there are other people out there like me that have had so many different passions and projects that they really want to go for. And it's hard when people are like, oh yeah, just follow your passion and just go for it. And so I had to, at one point, I want to say it was 2-3 years ago, I had just started a blog about traveling and finding out what makes you happy. And a lot of the things that I was uncovering in that process was I love to help people and I love to be of service. So if I can just use that as my passion, maybe that will lead me kind of breadcrumb style to my real passion. I don't know, even now I have a couple passions. I have a couple purposes. I don't really know. I can't put my finger on one. So
what is passion?
For me, I think passion is this feeling of being alive.
Yeah, I think like energy speaking, it's like, it's where your energy is, right? It's where you're lit up, where you're fueled. Mm-hmm. And it's something that like, there's like a reciprocity there. You feel it, it fuels you. And so it kind of completes this cycle. And so I totally hear you on the whole passion. I would love to speak to that too, because like I think that is very superficial advice to say like, I want to start a business, and someone's like, great, what's your passion? Go follow that, right? I think we should always move towards our passions, but I wouldn't just it's just that there's something missing when you just speak just to that like, I don't believe that just, like I'm really passionate about, give me something to be passionate about.
Underwater basket weaving.
That's a wonderful example. Really, okay, yeah, like, you could create a membership site around it, totally. But people would say, but I'm not passionate about creating a membership site, or I'm not passionate about selling, And so I think a part of this is, it's a blend between where are you passionate with where you can provide value and where you can get paid. And, we've said this before, but all business really comes down to is getting paid to solve problems for people. And so you can be passionate about something, but if it's not solving a problem for someone, it might be really hard to find a way to monetize it. Mm-hmm. There has to be some way that people will pay monetarily to have some sort of problem solved or solution provided. So I think it would be dangerous advice to just like run around going, look at all my passions. Yeah. I'm going to just, passion all over the place.
But actually, Cal Newport has a really interesting philosophy on finding your passion. And that came, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, it came out of just a frustration of everyone telling him to find his passion, follow your passion. He's like, well, I don't know what that is. And his whole hypothesis and kind of theory behind it is that if you become good at something, that becomes a passion, as opposed to find a passion and get good at it. It's get good at it first and it will become your passion. And I love that. And I think that in my brain makes a lot more sense because there's so many things, so many aspects of business that I love and probably equally as many that I don't love. So if I get really good at the ones I do love, then I can, be this big time business owner that I want to be and allow everyone else to do the other stuff that I don't want to do. But that then becomes my passion.
Yeah. I mean, I would say it's like a blend of both. I feel like if I were to rewind the clock, there's the time in my life where, this is high school and college time where I was really, really in a breakdown, really angry, beaten up on myself because I didn't know what I wanted to do with my life. And for some reason, I had decided that by the time you go to college, you better know. And then, of course, years later, you find out as I'm like teaching YouTube and video marketing, that stuff didn't exist back then. How the heck was I supposed to know what I would be doing in 5 years when it wasn't invented yet? YouTube was invented while I was in college, and I'm in high school, senior, going, I don't know where to apply to because I don't know what I want to do with my life, right? And I remember when I first got a dip into the world of not online marketing, actually, just marketing in general. The first book right out of college was Dan Kennedy's No BS Business Success. And I just remember reading the first chapter is about what is an entrepreneur. And there's a difference between an entrepreneur and a business owner, right? The business owner, you tell the difference if you were to follow the two over a course of 10 to 20 years. The business owner is the guy who runs the jewelry shop, and you were to go 10 years into the future, he's got the same jewelry shop. Maybe he's opened a second or a third location. He's consistently increased revenue over the years. He's grown the business. Maybe now he's got 3 employees instead of 2. The entrepreneur has taken the jewelry shop. They've created an online course. They have a retreat where you go and find, mine for diamonds yourself. They've created like 4 different other businesses, right? The entrepreneur is a person who's always seeking the new opportunity. And so as I'm reading this, I'm like, that's me. Like, oh my goodness, someone is describing me like someone actually gets me. So there was this like first dip into a big world of like, oh, this is the direction. I know I don't want to be a dancer. I don't want to be a politician, like all these major directions that you can turn in. I'm like, but business and marketing. So I'm just going to start going to that. But it was still, and I'd go to these events. People say, you got to find your passion and blah, 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 blah. I'm like, it's so funny because I'd sit there and go, I don't know what my passion is. But there I am sitting in a room at a marketing conference, not really realizing that I'm the kid in the front row. This is no joke. I have had, especially when I first started out, so many speakers would come up to me after they spoke, and they would say, I just want to thank you. I'm like, what? And they're like, you were paying full attention, and you had your eyes on me the whole time. Thank you. I really appreciate that. I was just so, like, fascinated. I would just sit on the edge of my chair with this notebook, just like ravishly taking notes. Like this was just the most amazing thing. Yet at the same time, I'm like, I don't know what my passion is. Like, but I was in a room where other people are getting confused and overwhelmed, and I don't know. And I'm just like, this is amazing. I just wish I knew what my passion was. And of course, it whittles down. Yeah. Like if you were thinking like you're making a sculpture, like it got whittled down over time. And you know what whittles it down to get more specific is action. Is the more work you do, the more movement and action and trials and everything, the more you go, oh, I definitely did not like that. And, oh, this is really fun. And the thing is, there's a lot of things that I really enjoy doing in this business today that I will not allow for me to become the business because they don't make you any money. Great example. In high school, I was really good at art. So I loved art. I loved drawing and painting. And not a lot of people know this about me. And so it's very easy in my own business here today with a whole team and a couple graphic designers that I'll get stuck designing a Facebook ad. Or like, oh, I like this. Yeah, I like this logo. And I'm like, oh, let's put this here. And then I'll look at the clock. I'm like, I just spent like 90 minutes on that. What was I doing? And it's like, stop it.
Doing something I coach my, my clients not to do. The $10 an hour task. Yep. And I'm doing it. So, I think having that discipline too about, well, wait a second. Like, I love doing this. This is fun. I would, if I can, the way I would sleep at night is say like, well, this isn't work. This was just
hobby time. I was just working on one of my hobbies, like drawing or painting. This is my hobby, creative time. We all need those things, right? But if that's the role you've assigned yourself in your business, that's a problem. That's a problem. Like someone, people say like, but I'm creative and I want to have then have a friggin' hobby and call it your hobby. And let's call your business your business. Because at the end of the day, if you're not the CEO, if you're not the visionary, if you're not the person who's saying, here's how we're going to make money this month, this quarter, this year, no one is. You can't outsource that. You can't, especially at our level, you can't just hire a CEO for you and say, I want this business, but I want you to run it. I want you to sell it. I want you to do everything. And I'm just going to, put my picture on the blog.
Right. And then you're just an employee and just then call that what it is, which is, well, I just do want to make art and I want to work for someone else, or I want to put it on Etsy or something. And, that was
a great thing, actually, just to comment what you said there. That was in E-Myth Revisited, where, he's having the author's having the conversation with there's like a baker or something, like a pie maker. And she's like, if I had to do all this stuff, I got into the business of baking pies because I wanted to bake pies. And she said, and his reply, not because I want to run a business. He says, great, go work for someone else then.
Yep.
And it's like, yeah, I think a lot of people have been sold on the idea that running your own business means you get to just get paid to have a lot of fun. And it's true if running a business is really fun, which for me, it really is. Like, it is. But if you're like, no, I don't want to do that stuff. I just want to do my, whatever hobby with it and just get paid. Like, it's just not going to happen. It's, it can, but there's no strategy there. And I think at the end of the day, one of the pieces I always like to add is I'm a strategy guy. So I need to connect the dot from the sale to how someone's going to find you and hand you money. And a lot of times, if you're not doing that, I guess, like if you're not coming up with that plan or strategy, no one is for you.
Awesome. So we had a couple questions come through that I thought were really interesting. So do you mind if we do a couple quick fire?
Yeah.
Q&A?
Let's lightning round the Q&A.
Awesome. Okay. So Jack Long asked how to turn anything into a positive, no matter the issue or negative force you're experiencing.
Oh, I love that.
And how being positive will bring good things.
It's always easier when I have an example, right? Because it's just a really vague question, but I think there is a direct correlation with being successful and your ability to reframe something, right? And that's all this is. Everything, turning a negative into a positive is simply reframing it. And in order to reframe, you need to take a big enough step back. So I think always it's step one, take a bigger step back than you're taking right now. Because when you're in the breakdown and it's a negative, you're too close to it. It's sudden. It just happened. You're emotional. It means life or death. It's now or never. It's, it's an attack on you. It's your identity is at stake. Your self-worth is at stake, whatever, right? And if we take a big enough step back, then we can start to see a different picture. So I'm going to give an example of a beautiful reframe. Before I started my business with video marketing, I was working with/for somebody else in another business. And I was kind of their behind the scenes business partner. Like, they were the face of the company and I did everything else, right? And so they actually were able to outsource all of their marketing to me because I did it all. And the relationship got pretty toxic pretty fast. It was yucky. And one day he calls me up. I remember exactly where I was standing. By the way, before working with him, I was not making any money. So we took his business from, he was doing a sale a day on an ebook, $30 a sale, one a day, to a six-figure business in 30, 60 days, something like that. I was getting him 16 to 20 sales on a $97 product a day. We just blew it up overnight. And that's probably another episode, like all the cool stuff we did. So now the business is making money, and now I'm like, okay, this is all I'm doing now. So I dropped everything and just worked on this. And I was getting a percentage. Big mistake, probably another episode, is that there was nothing in writing. So I was under the assumption I was a business partner, and he was totally clear that I was just a freelancer for a short amount of time. Okay, so I stopped everything else, and I just did this. And then one day he says, he goes, so the business is doing really well and it's fully automated. So I don't really need you anymore. And the thing is that was my job, was to make everything fully automated. That was the goal. And so I was like, yeah, I know. I did that. You're welcome. He's like, so we're good. I don't need you anymore. Oh, okay. And that was it. And I tried to fight. I was like, no, like, this is what we've been working towards. Like, I'm a partner. And then he hit me with something, and he said something like, let's be honest, like, do we really work well together? And I couldn't argue with that. So I was like, you're right. And we went separate ways. And it was a big breakdown. And I was upset, but only for like 30 minutes. I knew so fast that this was the biggest gift and opportunity for me. That if I wasn't given this opportunity, I would have safely, comfortably continued to work I was getting about $2,500 a month, and that was it. And this was all I was doing. And I would have safely and comfortably done this for who knows how long. And it was less than 6 months after this that I launched Video Traffic Academy with Lewis House. We did $400,000 in sales in 30 days. I would have never, ever done this if I was still working with the guy. And so I knew immediately, I was like, this is it. This is my chance to go out on my own. And I know this is my time. And now is it. And now I'm in this opportunity where I had the confidence of working with someone else, but also there's the holy crap, I'm on my own. Like, I got to make this work. And if I were to think back now, like, there's no anger, there's no animosity there. This was the most beautiful gift that could have ever been given to me, because sometimes we just get so comfortable. And so, I mean, that's one example I can give specifically of there is always a positive. There's always a lesson. There's always an opportunity. There's always a silver lining. It really is, because it's you that gets to put that meaning on it. It's you that gets to look at the world through your lens and your interpretation. And the answer ultimately is when you are focused forward. If you are standing in the present moment and looking forward out into the future, out to what's possible, out to what you're creating, out to what you're becoming, it can only be good. It can only be positive. And if you're like, I'm looking forward, James, and I don't see anything good, look further. Okay, maybe you're still in the thick of this. Maybe you still got to go through something. Look further. And there's always something possible in the future.
So the only thing, I am completely on board with that. And if you asked any of my friends, I think that they would tell you I'm probably the most positive person. I just tend to I've always done this. I've always turned everything into a positive. My mom always said, when you wake up in the morning, you have a choice. Is it going to be a great day or is it not? And every day I'd be like, all right, this is going to be a great day. Is this going to be awesome? And it's funny, when I had, a couple episodes ago, I was talking about this session that I had with this intuitive lady, and she and I were talking about how so much of my childhood I have blocked out. All of the negative I've completely blocked out. So any experiences that I've had that might have been negative in the situation, I don't even remember that they happened. And so the positive that I kind of took with them, and my argument to her was that I'm just choosing a feeling that serves me. I'm choosing something that feels better for me, and that is what I'm going to put in my suitcase and bring into the next, phase of my life. So I do agree with the positivity. I also think it is important, as you kind of mentioned, to really step back and evaluate. And I love the Tony Robbins, life happens for you, not to you. And if you just keep that in mind, just make sure in the moment when you are having a breakdown that you do take a couple moments and reframe it, and then just take it as a lesson, as opposed to, anything that would, because it says in the question, any, issue or negative force. Like, it's not a negative force. It's just something that you might perceive to be negative in that moment.
Right. So, and that's a big piece too, is like, who's saying it's negative?
Right.
We are. Right? Like, and that's another, obviously a big topic, but like, we're the one that's saying it's negative. It's just a thing. It's just is what it is. And we're saying it's bad. And yeah, if we're looking at the quality of our life is determined by the quality of questions we ask, a lot of times the default question we ask when those negative forces impose their will upon us is, why is this happening to me? Why me? What did I do to deserve this? So you ask those type of questions, what kind of answers are you going to get? You're going to get some crappy answers. But you start saying, okay, like, I'm angry. This was frustrating. This was tough. You're just getting real present in the moment. Where's the opportunity here? Where's the lesson for me? What can I learn? How can I make sure this never happens again? How can I grow from this? You start moving towards the direction of, forward thinking and new possibilities.
All right, so let's get into one more question before we wrap it up. Avi Singh asked, how much of your personal self should you share with your followers? I've heard you say that sharing a little bit helps establish rapport, but my story is that I've struggled with depression and anxiety, and part of me wants to share my story with others so they feel inspired. But the other part of me feels deathly scared in sharing such details.
That's a great question, and we should probably turn this into a longer episode, so we'll just give the short answer now, Avi, so thanks for the question. Okay, so I think there is a real sign, a good sign, a green light sign when the piece of ourselves that we want to share scares the crap out of us. That to me is a good indicator because that's the part we're trying to hide. That's why we're scared, because we're trying to hide it from the world. And it's when we start to reveal that I think we can connect with people on the deepest level possible. The asterisk that I like to put next to this, which is a mistake I think people will take too literally, is sharing. There is a way of sharing too much that can be very counterintuitive. So like, for example, if I'm a coach teaching you how to do Facebook ads, this is always my go-to example, and I share, I'm in the middle of a launch selling my Facebook ads course, and I'm freaking out because I know I don't know anything about Facebook ads, and I feel like a total fraud that I'm duping people because I really don't know that much about Facebook ads. That's not really the type of authentic sharing we're talking about here. So I think the most important thing is that one of the reasons why people are going to buy from you as a coach or a personal brand is because you have to be perceived as the guide, right? So you remember Star Wars, Luke Skywalker joins Obi-Wan and Phoebe.
I don't know. I've never seen Star Wars.
Oh my gosh.
That's what
I've given you a year to watch those movies.
As you were doing, I was like, nope.
You fight. All right. Yoda.
Oh.
Yoda.
Got
Yoda.
it.
Okay? And those are the guides for Luke, right? Now listen, Phoebe, when it comes to storytelling, the Star Wars story is the classic hero's journey. You really got to do your homework on this one, okay? That's action item number 1. Go watch Star Wars. Okay, but Obi-Wan, the Jedi, Yoda, this Jedi master, these are the guides that Luke is coming to. And you are the guide in your customer's hero's journey. And you can share vulnerably. You can share authentically. You can share all the stuff that you've been through that is scary to share. But if you're still going through it right now, you're going to take yourself out of being the guide role. And a lot of people say like, no, I'm going to say, we're going to do this together. You're going to learn beside me. It doesn't work. Mm-hmm. I've heard people try and do this, and a lot of my students, not a lot, but I've heard students come to me with it, and I said, please don't do this. It doesn't work. Actually, that's how I started. It's a cop-out. We're trying to like, I don't really want to say who am I to be the expert? So I'm going to say I'm learning with you. Come learn with me. No one's going to pay you to learn with you. Mm-hmm. They want the guide. So, but here's the important thing. You're not a guide to everyone on every topic. So the person who is the guide to Facebook ads has got to know Facebook ads. It's okay if he deals with health issues. It's okay if he deals with, or she deals with relationship issues and shares those, right?
Because that's where they're going to connect with their audience,
yes.
Being like, my husband isn't doing this, or my kids are the worst, or whatever it is. But that's where people relate to you and then are like, oh, well, she has terrible kids and I have terrible kids too, but I'd love to learn Facebook ads,
I have terrible kids. Listen, my kids suck. Buy my course.
Coming from the two people that don't have kids.
Yeah, right. I hate my kids. Oh my gosh, me too. No, you guys get the example, right? That like, if the sharing is like, I don't know what I'm actually talking about and I suck at Facebook ads, but please buy my... It's not going to happen. But if the share is about another area in your life, or it's something that you no longer deal with today, I think it's so beneficial, so powerful. Do you think we answered that question?
I think so, yeah.
Good. All right, let's wrap this up. This has been an episode about nothing. Way to go. That was good. We had a good organic conversation. We covered a lot of ground, didn't we?
Well, and this is what it would be like to be a fly on the wall in our conversations, really.
Yeah. Except in real life, we don't edit out the bad parts.
That's true.
That's true.
Thankfully. Well.
We don't edit out the parts where Phoebe's laughing at me.
Then we'd never get an episode.
We'd never get an episode.
It's 3 hours long.
So thank you guys so much for listening. Thank you for listening for this past 12 months. And here's to another 12 months, another 50 somewhat amazing, maybe more episodes of awesomeness. Until next time, I'm James Wedmore.
I'm Phoebe Mroczek.
And this is the Mind Your Business Podcast. Are you frustrated that no matter how hard you hustle, no matter how much you get done in a day, you still feel like you have little results to show for it? Do you feel like you're doing everything right, but there's still something missing? Well, what if there was an easier way? What if your business could be fun, effortless, and profitable? Phoebe and I have put together a free audio MP3 for you, compiling the 77 business affirmations for creating success from the inside out. And we want to give it to you absolutely free. This is your chance to rewire your brain for bigger results in your life and your business. To get instant access absolutely free, simply visit 77affirmations.com. That's the number 77affirmations.com.